How's it going, everyone? This is not my normal spot for how I usually do reviews. As you all know, I tend to do reviews out on the trail. That's my favorite place to do them because that's where I spend most of my time testing all of this gear. But here's what we're doing today. Today we're going to be talking about the Wahoo Elemnt Rival watch. It's a multi-sport watch that has seamless integration with other Wahoo products like a bike computer. The reason I'm going to be doing a lot of this review here indoors is because I've spent the last month and a half running in this watch out on the trails. So I thought, why not take an opportunity to sit in my office, hang out in front of my computer, and talk to everybody about how this watch works. I'll also add on top of that, it's about 10 degrees outside, and I'm just not super excited about all of you hearing my teeth chatter as I try and talk to you about some of the positive and negatives of this watch. All right, so let's jump in. What I want to start with is talking about all of the things this watch does do. And then I'll kind of jump into the two aspects around multisport, seamless integration, as well as the GPS accuracy and battery life, and I'll let those kind of stand on their own to finally kind of end it all with talking about what doesn't it do, and then share some final thoughts. So here's a little bit about what you need to know about the watch. First of all, it's very light. It's incredibly comfortable. The watch band is durable, but it doesn't dig into my skin at all, and I think a lot of that has to do with the weight. It has Gorilla Glass on the front, so it's very durable, scratch resistant. I've kind of banged this watch up when I've been rock climbing, as well as doing some canyoneering, and have not had any issues with any scratches to this point, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It has all of your typical multi-sport default activity functions that you can select from and add to and remove on the watch through the app. Each of those default activities are customizable. Now beyond that, you can create your own customized activity profiles and then have those on the watch ready to use. I've done that a number of times, and I'll speak to that in a little bit. It does have an in-wrist heart rate monitor. I'm not a fan of heart rate monitors that's built into the wrist. I will say that the Elemnt Rival is actually pretty good. And I think what makes it pretty good isn't that it's accurate to the very second of what my heart is actually doing, but what I like about it is it's not as glitchy and sensitive as something like my Suunto Baro 9, that if there's any gap between your wrist and the watch, the heart rate just doesn't register at all. This one actually does a pretty decent job, so I'm pretty psyched about that. But it also pairs with a heart rate sensor chest strap, which I do have and I've used, and when I'm using that, it's very, very accurate. Okay, so what else does it have? Good battery life. It's not going to be up there with your Garmin Fenix 6 or your Suunto 9, not going to be up there with a couple of the Coros watches, but running at full capacity with heart rate monitor and full GPS, you are going to get close to about 24 hours on this watch, which means you're going to get through any big ultra that's in the 50 mile to 100K range. You're going to start to really push the limits of it in a 100 miler, especially something that's a slower race with a lot of climbing and vert. So you do also get notifications through the watch. You can get phone calls, texts, and any schedule reminders that are on your phone calendar. So that's pretty cool. And then the other thing I really want to mention is that it has great integration with the app. The upload times are significantly faster than Suunto, probably pretty equivalent to something like a Garmin. The app itself is phenomenal. By far the most user-friendly watch integration app I've ever used. Super psyched on it. Clearly Wahoo has had a ton of experience with developing their apps and its integration with their bike computers. So the fact that they've been able to translate it to what you do on a watch made a whole bunch of sense, and they absolutely killed it. The main purpose of this watch, it is designed specifically for triathletes, that it allows for seamless integration between the watch and a bike computer and back whenever you're in a triathlon. Now, I'm not a triathlete. This review is primarily around trail running. But that said, I did put this watch through a whole bunch of different types of activity. Trail running being the most frequent. Obviously, I run 6 days a week. But I also rode my mountain bike with this. I took it rock climbing. I did strength training. I went backcountry skiing. I went downhill skiing at a resort. And I even went canyoneering. And it gave me a really broad idea of how the watch worked in different settings, as well as testing out the different activity types. But first, let's really jump into this multi-sport feature. And to do that, I'm gonna jump over myself out on a trail and let me open up with that. Anyway, so today I'm gonna be doing a 4-mile trail run, immediately followed by the same route on my mountain bike. The whole transition just seemed like a bust, to be honest, but I'm entirely certain that it was user error and that I just need to figure out how the two are supposed to sync. Okay, so I'm back out here. It didn't really seem to work last time, but that's because I didn't actually have it in one of the multi-sport workout modes. We'll see how that goes and we'll test it out. So let's go. Okay, so as you can see, I had a little bit of trouble with trying to figure out the multi-sport functionality. It is not touchless. At least nothing I could figure out about the watch and the bike computer integration was 100% touchless. I did have to hit this upper right-hand button to actually transition the watch from bike computer to watch and then back to bike computer. Now, does that make it not worth getting? Absolutely not. It's still a phenomenal watch in the way that it integrates, because the reality is in the course of doing 3 different activities, I only had to hit the same button twice. So it does work, and it works phenomenally well, but it took some figuring out. You need to watch the tutorials. It took me 2 times of testing out the integration functionality for me to actually figure out how it works. During each of those sports, one of the things I love about this watch that I've never seen anywhere else is that it has a zoom in and out feature. When I'm running a 50 miler or even a 100 miler, I don't really want to see the miles ticking away on my watch. At best, I want to see the time. That's all I really care about, maybe my elevation. This zoom in and out feature lets you zoom in to only see the prioritized fields that you want to see, which makes it amazing. Okay, so now let's talk about GPS accuracy. I've worn this watch every day, out running for over a month now. And on several of those runs, I actually wore it with my Sunto Barrow 9 on my other wrist. I took it down to Little Wild Horse Canyon in the surrounding area. I did a 37-mile run with some friends of mine, specifically to test the GPS accuracy compared with the Sunto Barrow 9, and also the battery life on a run that I knew would take anywhere from 7 to 8 hours. Sunto tends to measure GPS longer than its competitors. Breeze running with a Garmin, and so it'll be really interesting to see how these 3 watches compare. this watch killed it. So shocked at how accurate it was on a run that long. Against any other watch, even a watch of the same brand, when you do a run that's 2 hours or more, you can always assume that there is going to be some degree of separation in distance. Upwards of 0.2 of a mile to even half a mile. The Elemnt Rival and the Suntone 9 got off by a half mile. I don't think that was a failure of the Rival or the 9. I think they both face their individual issues, because once I was through that first slot canyon, the GPS accuracy between those two watches did not vary by more than 1/10 of a mile ever for the almost 30 miles that we did after that. That's incredible. That, I think, says, big thumbs up to Wahoo Elemnt Rival, because their GPS accuracy is phenomenal, especially in tricky places like a slot canyon and high vert areas where there's cliffs around. Battery life is great. As mentioned before, this is probably not something I'm going to use in a 100-miler, but I would love to use anywhere 50 miles, 100K, wouldn't even bat an eye. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things this watch doesn't do that might be important to you. First and foremost, there's no mapping feature on the watch. There's no track back. So you're not going to use this watch out on a long adventure run where you can add in waypoints, or if you think you might be getting lost, you can use the track back feature. It doesn't have that. So for those of you who want the watch but are a little concerned about the mapping feature, just do what I do. Take your phone. I run the Gaia app. The Gaia app has all of my routes where I build my routes anyway. You can track your routes without having to have cell service. It works on satellite. So because of that, I don't really care about the mapping feature. So one of the other things that it doesn't have any weather, no temperature, nothing like that. Oddly enough, when you're in some of the different activity settings, there is an option to customize, and it says weather, and it gives you an option to put the temperature in there. It doesn't work. So just know that that's not meant for your watch. It's probably meant for one of the bike computers. If you add it to your watch, it will simply say not available. So keep that in mind. The only other negative I have with the watch is there have been 2 different times when I've gone to upload an activity and the app is not recognizing the watch. It just says searching for device. The first time to fix it, I turned my phone off and on. The second time, I turned the watch off and on, which seemed a little bit easier, and that fixed it. I've had the same issue with every watch I've ever owned. At some point, there's always some type of connectivity issue. Okay, so final thoughts. First of all, I'm just gonna go out and say, I love this watch. It ranks as one of my favorite watches I've ever owned. The second thing is that for what you get in this watch, priced at $380, it's a good buy. If you're a multi-sport athlete, if you have this idea of biking to a trailhead and then biking home, there's no better watch to use than the Wahoo Elemnt Rival coupled with a Wahoo bike computer. So cool. Now that I figured it out, you got to do your work, do your research, get educated, know how to use that multi-sport feature, and you will absolutely love that. If you're a big adventure runner and you need that mapping and track back feature, this may not be the watch for you. But I'm willing to bet that of those of you who are watching this video, you represent a very small percentage of the people who are looking for this type of a watch. This is an honest review. I love this watch. I'll continue to use it. I hope that you found this informative, and leave a comment below and your thoughts on what you think about it. We're always looking for a company who's doing something that's unique and different. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like Wahoo has really carved into that unique space of what a watch can do that has never been done before. So check it out, leave a comment below, Let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk to you next week.